If you've ever doubted the incredible connections that can form between humans and animals, this story will change your perspective forever. A wild horse's desperate plea for help leads to an unforgettable encounter that challenges everything we thought we knew about wildlife. Subscribe to our channel and leave a comment sharing your thoughts about this remarkable tale of trust and courage. Don't forget to share this story with fellow animal lovers. The morning sun cast long shadows across the desert as Mike Carter, a park ranger with 15 years of experience, began his usual rounds through the Red Rock Wildlife Reserve. Something felt different today. The air carried an unusual tension, disturbing the peaceful landscape he knew so well. Mike stopped his vehicle near a dried-up stream bed, scanning the horizon with his binoculars. That's when he spotted it, a flash of chestnut brown against the dusty terrain. A horse was galloping straight toward him, which was highly unusual behavior. As the horse drew closer, Mike could see it was a beautiful mare with intelligent eyes and a distinctive white marking down her face. Her coat was covered in dust, her breathing heavy for what appeared to be a long, desperate run. "Easy there," Mike whispered, though he knew she was still too far to hear. What happened next defied everything Mike knew about wild horses. Instead of keeping her distance, the mare approached within 20 feet of his vehicle, stomping her hooves and repeatedly tossing her head toward the eastern ridge. Mike had heard old stories about horses seeking human help, but always dismissed them as folklore. Yet here was this wild mare, clearly trying to communicate something urgent. "What is it, girl?" Mike asked cautiously, stepping out of his vehicle. The mare whinnied loudly, stopping again before taking several steps eastward. When Mike didn't immediately follow, she returned, coming even closer this time, her eyes wide with desperation. That's when Mike noticed small streaks of blood on her front legs. Not hers. Something was very wrong. Securing his emergency pack, Mike began to follow her, feeling that whatever waited beyond that ridge would change everything he thought he knew about these magnificent animals. The mare maintained a careful pace, frequently looking back to ensure Mike was still following. Her movements were urgent yet deliberate, guiding him across the range she clearly knew by heart. As they traveled deeper into Mustang territory, Mike radioed his position to headquarters. The response he received was filled with disbelief. "Copy that, Carter. Just be careful out there. Backup is 2 hours away if needed." As they crested a rocky outcrop, Mike spotted a small herd of Mustangs in the distance. Unlike their usual tight-knit groups, these horses were scattered, their body language suggesting distress. The mare leading Mike nickered softly, and several horses raised their heads, watching their approach with unusual intensity. An older rancher named Tom Wilson had once told Mike about the intelligence of these wild horses. "They ain't just animals, son. They remember, they feel, and sometimes they understand more than we give them credit for." Mike had nodded politely then, attributing the old man's words to sentimentality. Now he wasn't so sure. The mare led him toward a narrow passage between two towering rock formations. The path grew steeper, challenging even for Mike's experienced hiking abilities. Small rocks cascaded down as he navigated the difficult terrain. As they rounded a sharp bend in the trail, the mare stopped abruptly, her ears pricked forward, her entire body tense. Mike followed her gaze and felt his chest tighten. About 50 yards ahead, a section of the canyon wall had collapsed, creating a natural pit with steep sides. Trapped within it was a young foal, unmistakably the mare's offspring. The foal's frightened whinnies echoed against the canyon walls as it tried repeatedly to climb the steep sides, only to slide back down. From Mike's position, he could see the foal's right leg was injured, making escape impossible without help. Looking at the mare, who was now staring directly at him, Mike understood exactly why she had sought him out among all the humans who patrolled these lands. "I see your baby," Mike said softly, "but reaching it safely wouldn't be easy. The path to the pit was treacherous, a narrow ledge barely wide enough for a person to traverse, with sheer drop on one side. One wrong step could mean disaster for both Mike and the foal." Halfway across, a few pebbles dislodged beneath his boot, cascading down into the depth below. Mike froze, heart pounding, fingers digging into small crevices in the rock face. The mare whinnied anxiously from behind him. "It's okay," Mike called out. unsure if he was reassuring the horse or himself. After what felt like an eternity, Mike reached the bottom of the pit. The foal panicked at his approach, limping to the furthest corner and crying out in fear. The sound triggered an immediate response in the mare, who paced along the edge, clearly distressed by her baby's cries. Just as Mike reached the bottom, his foot slipped on the rain-slick stone. He fell hard, twisting his ankle with a sickening pop. Pain shot up his leg, and he bit back a cry, knowing that showing distress would only frighten the horses further. Now they were both trapped, an injured ranger and a wounded foal, with the storm intensifying overhead and help still far away. "I'm sorry," Mike whispered, the gravity of the situation sinking in. The rain fell in sheets now, quickly pooling at the bottom of the pit. Mike dragged himself to higher ground within confined space, fighting through the pain in his ankle. The water level was rising steadily. Within an hour, the entire pit could be flooded. The foal stood trembling in the corner, regarding Mike with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Its injured leg was held carefully above the ground, and occasional shivers ran through its small body. "We're in trouble, little one," Mike said softly. "But I'm not giving up." He tried his radio again, but the canyon walls and storm interference rendered it useless. Above them, the mare continued her vigilant watch, occasionally disappearing from view only to reappear moments later. Mike noticed she was moving differently now, more purposeful, less panicked. Using his uninjured leg and upper body strength, Mike inched closer to the foal, speaking in low, soothing tones. "I need to check your leg, buddy. I'm not going to hurt you." To his surprise, the young horse didn't retreat further. Instead, it watched Mike with intelligent eyes that reminded him strongly of its mother. Slowly, cautiously, Mike extended his hand, allowing the foal to catch his scent. Minutes passed in this careful dance of trust-building, the storm raging overhead and water continuing to rise around them. Finally, the foal took a tentative step toward Mike, nearly collapsing as it tried to put weight on its injured leg. "That's it," Mike encouraged. When the foal was within reach, Mike gently examined the wound. The gash was deep but hadn't damaged any tendons or major blood vessels. With proper care, the young horse would make a full recovery. Mike cleaned the wound as best he could with supplies from his pack and wrapped it with self-adhesive bandage. Throughout the procedure, the foal remained surprisingly calm, as if understanding Mike's intentions. Once finished, Mike stroked the young horse's neck, feeling a swell of emotion at the trust this wild creature was placing in him. "Now we just need to figure out how to get out of here," Mike said, glancing up at the steep walls that had become even more treacherous in the rain. His attention was drawn by movement above. The mare had returned, but she wasn't alone. To Mike's astonishment, she had brought 3 other Mustangs from her herd, 2 strong stallions and another mare. They stood at the edge of the pit, looking down with what Mike could only describe as determination. The mare disappeared again, and Mike heard scrabbling sounds from the far side of the pit. Moments later, part of the wall collapsed inward, creating a rough sloping surface that led toward the top. It wasn't a clean ramp by any means, but it created a potential escape route. Understanding dawned on Mike. The horses had created an escape route, but the foal couldn't climb it alone. They needed Mike's help for the final piece of the puzzle. Fighting through his own pain, Mike fashioned a makeshift splint for his ankle, using branches that had washed into the pit and strips torn from his emergency blanket. Then, with gentle hands, he lifted the foal in his arms. The young horse was heavier than expected, and Mike's injured ankle protested with each step. But determination drove him forward. Slowly, painfully, he began to ascend the crude slope, carrying the foal toward its waiting mother. Halfway up, Mike's makeshift splint gave way. His ankle buckled, and he fell to one knee, nearly dropping the foal. The young horse whinnied in fear, and its mother responded with an urgent call from above. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. The mare carefully picked her way down the slope, defying her natural caution around humans, and positioned herself beside Mike. Her message was clear: "Put my foal on my back." "This is insane," Mike muttered, but he had no better options. With the last of his strength, he lifted the foal and carefully placed it across its mother's back, helping to balance in a position where it wouldn't fall. Together, The unlikely trio began their ascent. The wild mare moved with deliberate care to keep her foal balanced, and Mike used the horse's sturdy presence for support as he limped alongside them. The storm was beginning to ease as they emerged from the pit, gray light filtering through breaks in the clouds. Once on level ground, the mare gently lowered herself, allowing the foal to slide carefully off her back. The young horse immediately nuzzled its mother. Their reunion was a powerful display of love that transcended species. Mike sank to the ground nearby, exhausted and in pain, but deeply moved by what he had witnessed. As he caught his breath, Mike noticed something unusual about the mare's movements. She was limping slightly, favoring her left front leg. Looking more closely, Mike could see old scars around her fetlock, evidence of a past injury. Realization dawned on him as pieces began to fall into place. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. From it, he extracted a faded photograph of a chestnut filly with a distinctive white blaze, a horse he'd helped rescue 7 years earlier. "Liberty," he whispered, using the name he'd given to a young horse they'd found trapped in an abandoned mine shaft. She'd been badly injured and terrified of humans, but something in her eyes had touched Mike deeply. He'd spent weeks helping the veterinary team with her rehabilitation before she was released back into the wild. The mare's ears pricked forward at the sound, her intelligent eyes fixed on Mike's face. She took several cautious steps toward him, stretching her neck to sniff the photograph in his hand. "It is you," Mike said, his voice thick with emotion. "You remember me." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just any wild Mustang who had sought human help by chance. This was Liberty, a horse who, despite her natural wariness of humans, had specifically sought out the one person she remembered helping her years ago. Mike's radio crackled to life, the storm's interference finally clearing. "Ranger Carter, do you copy? Ground team is 30 minutes out. What's your status?" Mike reached for the radio with shaking hands. "I copy. I've located the foal. Situation is extraordinary. Request veterinary support for minor injuries to the foal and medical assistance for myself. I've sustained an ankle injury." "Copy that. Stay put. We'll find you." As he set the radio down, Mike noticed Liberty was still watching him, her foal now pressed against her side for security. "You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you?" Mike said softly. "You remembered that humans helped you once, so you came looking for that same help for your baby." Liberty nickered softly, as if in response. She took another step closer, allowing Mike to extend his hand toward her. For a breathtaking moment, the wild mare lowered her head, her muzzle gently touching his palm in a gesture that transcended the natural boundaries between their worlds. The touch lasted only seconds before Liberty stepped back, returning to her natural caution. But those seconds had contained a connection so profound that Mike felt tears welling in his eyes. As Liberty and her foal moved a safe distance away to wait, Mike noticed something that had been hidden by the chaos of the rescue. In a protected hollow nearby lay the remains of an old ranger hat, one just like he had lost during Liberty's rescue all those years ago. She had kept it close all this time, perhaps as a token of the human who had once saved her life. Mike looked up at the clearing sky, a sense of awe washing over him. Bold lesson. Trust and kindness transcend barriers, creating bonds that can change lives and challenge our understanding of the world.